Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. As Donald Trump renews his insults and terror threats, many Canadians have now had enough. They are literally pulling their money out of the United States and selling off U.S. investments. More on that in a moment. First, the harshest criticism of Donald Trump in Canada is now coming from an American. Jesse March is the U.S.-born coach of Canada's national soccer team.
If I have one message to our president, it's lay off the ridiculous rhetoric about Canada being the 51st state. As an American, I'm ashamed, right, of the arrogance and disregard that we've shown one of our historically oldest, strongest, and most loyal allies.
The Trump arrogance and disregard of Canada that Marsh spoke about is now hurting the U.S. real estate market. Analysts say thousands of Canadians who own U.S. homes are now selling their properties. Canadian Dale Botting just listed his winter home in Chandler, Arizona.
As an ethical investor, I just don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like to invest in governments that are becoming more authoritarian or more imperialistic. And we certainly see that.
Botting said he initially thought Trump was just blustering about Canada and so much else, and that the Trump extremism would eventually die down. Now, Botting says the Trump MAGA movement is out of control.
Trump regime and this cultism that I do get a little worried about if it starts to spread. And I feel for Americans. I mean, I can go home and I'm going to go home and I'm going to help fight this trade war. But I worry about folks who are watching this increasing authoritarianism kick in almost every bloody night. The last 30 days have started to feel like 30 years.
Realtors in Arizona and Florida say there are so many Canadian owners looking to dump their U.S. properties that the market sell-off has been like an avalanche. Even though this time of year is usually slow, real estate accountants and lawyers say they are currently fully booked weeks in advance. Lori Levine is a Canadian in Phoenix who helps Canadians buy and sell real estate there.
7 out of those 10 are listing because they just have had enough. They love coming here, and they're hoping that in 4 years from now, when the administration changes, that the climate will get a little bit different. But yeah, they've been feeling bullied and feeling the pinch of the Canadian dollar. So the bullying is kind of the last straw that broke the camel's back.
And that bullying from Trump continues. He recently posted on Truth Social, drugs are still pouring into our country from Mexico and Canada at very high and unacceptable levels. We cannot allow this scourge to continue to harm the USA, and therefore, until it stops or is seriously limited, the proposed tariffs scheduled to go into effect on March 4th will indeed go into effect as scheduled. Last month, President Trump suspended his planned tariffs on Canada when Canada said it would honor a pledge made to the Biden administration to add more border security. Amidst the latest Trump tariff threats, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is repeating basic facts.
And for months now, I've been emphasizing that less than 1% of the fentanyl that arrives in the United States comes from Canada. But we know that even that 1% or less than 1% should be reduced, which is why we've invested $1.3 billion in strengthening our border capacities with Black Hawk helicopters, with drones, with 10,000 people patrolling our borders and keeping Canadians and Americans safe. And we will continue, as we are this week, with ministers and heads of agencies, including the Commissioner of the RCMP and the head of the CBSA and our fentanyl czar down in Washington to demonstrate that this is an issue that we should be working together on and that Canada is not the source of problems for the United States.
As you heard, Canadian and U.S. officials are meeting in Washington to talk about the border, and there is some speculation that Donald Trump's latest tariff threats are a ploy to try and eke out more concessions from Canada in the talks. Still, if President Trump moves forward with the new tariffs on Canada next week, Prime Minister Trudeau says that Canada, once again, is ready to hit back.
Like I said, if on Tuesday there are unjustified tariffs brought in on Canada, we will have an immediate and extremely strong response, as Canadians expect.
While Trudeau and other Canadian lawmakers may now be used to the back and forth with Trump, the threats and counter-threats, and the Trump comments about Canadian statehood, many Canadian citizens are clearly tired of it all. In their minds, and in the minds of countless Americans, Canada should not be threatened, demeaned, and denigrated in the first place. Canada is America's #1 trading partner and closest ally. According to public data, Canadians bring more tourism and investment dollars into the United States than citizens of any other nation in the world. But those Canadian investments in America are diminishing, and it's having an impact. The glut of homes being sold by Canadians in Arizona and Florida is causing the markets there to soften. With a greater supply of homes on the market than demand, prices are dropping. And that means all homeowners in certain Florida and Arizona communities are seeing their houses get devalued. Instead of pumping up U.S. home values, Donald Trump is bringing them down. And that is just 2 months into the Trump administration. However, the Trump insults and menacing of Canada have been constant. And so, it's not just U.S. leadership decency that has disappeared this winter. A lot of Canadians are disappearing from America as well and taking their money and investments elsewhere. By the way, Texas Democrat Jasmine Crockett just ripped President Trump and his Republican House supporters over Ukraine.
It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? No, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who. Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem.
Do you believe when Trump would not call Putin a dictator earlier, is that a negotiating strategy, or do you think he just doesn't think he is one?
Look, Trump's defenders say everything he says is a negotiating strategy, including when he says A and the next day says not A. It's all just a negotiating strategy. I think it's an indication his mind is full of mush, and he says whatever comes into it. He believes Vladimir Putin is his friend. And, you know, you don't call your friends dictators. He doesn't like Volodymyr Zelensky. He hasn't liked him since the perfect phone call of the summer of 2018. So it's no sweat off his back to go ahead and call Zelensky a dictator. This is somebody who is not fit to be president. He can't tell America's friends from its enemies.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Patty, who wrote, "So disgusted with Trump and his suck-up bullies. Love Crockett." Indeed. I look forward to reading your comments about Canadians blasting Donald Trump and selling off their U.S. investments. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.